The morning I cut them off, I was eating cereal alone at my kitchen counter. Honey Nut Cheerios. I remember because the milk had gone slightly sour and I ate it anyway, staring at the wall, and I thought, this is the most peaceful breakfast I've had in 3 years. 24 hours earlier, my sister had grabbed a fistful of my dress in front of 40 people and told me I looked like the help. Let me back up. My name is Mara. I'm 31 years old. I work as a senior financial analyst at a mid-sized logistics firm in Atlanta. I have a studio apartment I love, a savings account I built from nothing, and until 8 months ago, I was quietly, invisibly, systematically funding the entire lifestyle of my sister's family, her husband, their 2 kids, her weekend trips, her car lease, her gym membership, the private school tuition she bragged about at every family dinner. None of them knew it was me. That was my first mistake. And for a long time, I told myself it wasn't a mistake at all. I told myself it was love. My sister Brittany is 3 years older than me. Growing up, she was the one people noticed. Louder, funnier, the kind of person who walks into a room and the room rearranges itself around her. I was quieter. I got good grades. I stayed in my lane. Our parents, who divorced when I was 12 and never quite recovered financially from it, always said Brittany just needed time to find her footing. She's still finding it. She's 34. Her husband Derek works in business development, which, as far as I can tell, means he has a lot of lunches and very few outcomes. They live in a house in Marietta that costs $4,200 a month. Their kids go to Westbrook Academy, which is $18,000 per child per year. Brittany drives a white Mercedes GLE that she posts about constantly. 3 years ago, Brittany called me crying. Derek's commissions had dried up, she said. They were 3 months behind on the house. The school was threatening to drop the kids mid-semester. She needed help. Just temporarily. Just to get through the rough patch. I said yes. I told myself it was a loan. I even typed up a little informal document, which neither of us ever signed. I transferred $11,000 into her account that week. She cried and told me I was the best sister in the world. That was the last time she ever said anything like that to me. 6 months later, the rough patch hadn't ended. I was covering the mortgage directly now. She gave me the landlord's account number and I just transferred every month, quietly. I paid the school fees under a parent account she'd set up in both their names, so the school just saw the Caldwells when they looked at who was current. Derek didn't know. Or maybe he did and chose not to ask. I never knew for certain. What I do know is that Brittany never told him it was me. I asked her once about a year in. Does Derek know where the money comes from? He thinks it's from a family fund, she said, almost breezy. Like an inheritance thing. There is no inheritance thing, Brittany. I know, but it's easier this way. You know how he gets about pride. I let it go. That was my second mistake. Here is what those 3 years looked like from the outside. Brittany's family thrived. Her Instagram filled up with beach vacations and dinner reservations and a kitchen renovation she did in the spring. White quartz countertops, a farmhouse sink. She went to a bear class every morning at a studio that charges $38 per class. Her kids were in swim team and chess club and a theater program. Derek got new golf clubs. Here's what those 3 years looked like from my side. I stopped contributing to my 401k for 18 months. I skipped a dental cleaning because I was anxious about spending $200 out of pocket. I turned down a trip to Portugal with my college friends because I told myself I couldn't afford it. Technically, I could have afforded it. I just couldn't afford it and also cover the Caldwell family's September expenses. I told nobody. Not my mother, not my friends. I kept showing up to family dinners and watching Brittany talk about her life like she'd built it herself, and I smiled and passed the rolls and said nothing. Why? I've thought about this a lot. The honest answer is complicated and not flattering to me. Part of it was that I genuinely loved her kids and didn't want their lives disrupted. Part of it was old family conditioning. Brittany was the one who got to have needs, and my job, since childhood, was to quietly solve problems without making anyone uncomfortable. But a big part of it, the part I hate to admit, was that I thought if I kept helping, eventually she'd see me, really see me, the way you hope someone will. She didn't. The anniversary party was my mother's idea. My parents had been divorced for 19 years, but my mother, who is nothing if not committed to the performance of family, decided that their shared history of raising two daughters was worth celebrating with a dinner at the Ainsley Club, which is a private dining venue in Buckhead that requires a member to host. Brittany knew a member. Of course she did. The guest list was about 40 people. Extended family, some of our parents' old friends, Brittany and Derek's social circle, a lot of people I'd met maybe once. The dress code was cocktail attire. I wore a navy wrap dress I'd owned for 2 years. It fit well. It was clean and pressed. I did my hair. I wore the pearl earrings my grandmother left me when she died. I was the first one there, which meant I helped my mother arrange the place cards and made sure the dietary notes had been passed to the kitchen. I carried things. I confirmed the timeline with the event coordinator. By the time guests started arriving, I had been there an hour and a half, and I was tired before the night even started. Brittany arrived 40 minutes late in a floor-length emerald gown. She looked stunning. She always does. She swept in on Derek's arm and the room did that thing it always does, rearranged itself around her. For the first hour, everything was fine. I circulated, talked to my aunt from Savannah, chatted with my dad's old college roommate about his grandkids. I had a glass of wine. I was okay. Then my mother's friend Paulette, who does not believe in tactful conversation, appeared at my elbow and said loudly enough for the cluster of people nearby to hear, "Mara, honey, you look so sweet and simple." Very understated. "Did you not get the dress code?" I smiled. "I got it. Brittany looks just spectacular, doesn't she?" "You two are so different." She laughed and moved on. I stood there for a moment, set my wine glass down on a passing tray, took a breath. Brittany had heard. She was maybe 10 feet away. I saw the flicker of something cross her face, not embarrassment on my behalf. Something more like confirmation. Like Paulette had said out loud what Brittany had been thinking all evening, and then Brittany walked over to me, and instead of saying anything kind, instead of standing beside me the way a sister should, she reached out and pinched the fabric of my dress between her fingers. "This is what you chose?" she said quietly enough that it was technically between us. Loudly enough that the 3 people closest to us could hear. "Tonight of all nights? Mom's party? You really couldn't put in any effort." I looked at her hand on my dress. I looked at her face. I said very calmly, "Let go of my dress. I'm just saying. You look like you came to clear the tables. People are noticing, Mara." The 3 nearby people were definitely listening now. I could feel it. Something shifted in me then. Not dramatically. There was no explosion, no surge of rage. It was more like a door closing, quiet, final. The way a door closes when you leave a place for the last time and you know it. I said, "Have a nice evening, Brittany." And I got my bag, said a quiet goodbye to my mother, and walked out. In the elevator going down, I pulled out my phone. I had 3 different financial institution apps. I opened the first one. I want to be clear about the sequence of events because I've had months now to think about what I did and whether I'd do it differently. And the answer is no, but I want to be accurate. I didn't do anything that night out of pure rage. I was calm. Uncomfortably calm. The kind of calm that comes when something you've been bracing for finally arrives and your nervous system just settles. I drove home. I took a shower. I sat on my couch in my robe and I made a list, by hand in a notebook, of every financial arrangement I had with Brittany's family. The mortgage payments. The school tuition. The car lease, which I'd been co-signing for 18 months because her credit wouldn't clear it alone. A personal line of credit I'd extended her last fall for what she said was a medical expense, and which I later found out was a bathroom remodel. The list took up 2 pages. Then I went to bed. The next morning I made my Honey Nut Cheerios and I ate them alone in the quiet, and then I opened my laptop and I got to work. The car lease was the simplest. I notified the dealership that I was removing myself as co-signer and that they should contact the primary account holder directly regarding continued payments. The representative I spoke with was very professional. He did not seem surprised. The tuition was handled through the school's finance office. I let them know that the account arrangement was changing and that future billing should be directed to the family directly. They would have 30 days to establish a new payment arrangement. The mortgage was trickier because I wasn't on the lease. I'd been making third-party payments. I simply stopped. I sent Brittany a text that said, "Starting this month, I won't be covering the house. You should make arrangements." She didn't respond for 6 hours. When she did, it was a single text. "What does that mean?" I didn't answer. Then I called my mother. That conversation was hard. My mother went silent for a long time when I explained what had been happening. Not the ending, but all of it. 3 years of it. She didn't know. She had genuinely believed, I think, that Brittany and Derek had figured things out on their own. The silence on the phone stretched long enough that I thought she might have set it down. Finally she said, "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I thought she'd change." Another silence. Then, "Oh, baby." That was when I cried. Not in the elevator. Not at home. On the phone with my mother. At 11 a.m. on a Tuesday. Over a bowl of cereal that had already gone cold. What happened over the next 6 weeks is a story Brittany would tell very differently. And I understand that, but here's what I saw. Derek called me first, actually. 3 days after I'd sent the text. He was calmer than I expected. Quieter. Actually, in a way that made me think he'd known more than he let on. He asked if there was any way to work something out. I said I was open to a conversation, but that whatever happened next needed to be honest. He needed to know exactly what had been covered, for how long, and by whom. There was a pause on the line. Then he said, "How long?" 3 years, I said. Almost to the month. He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I need to call you back." He didn't call back. What happened instead is that Brittany called. And that call was not calm. She said I was doing this to punish her. That I'd been holding the money over her head for years as a form of control. That the only reason I helped was so I could feel superior. That I had ambushed her at the party by being intentionally dowdy to make her look bad. I let her talk. When she was done, I said, "I need you to understand something. I didn't tell anyone. Not Mom, not Derek, not your friends. For 3 years I protected your version of your life. I'm not doing that anymore. But I'm also not going out of my way to tell people. What happens next is up to you and Derek." She hung up. The school contacted the Caldwells in the 3rd week of October about the outstanding balance. By November, both kids had been quietly transferred to the public school in their district, which is, by every measure I'm aware of, a perfectly good school. I know this because my mother told me, and because I looked it up, and because I spent a week feeling guilty about the kids before I remembered that I am not their parent, and that the people responsible for their stability had spent 3 years outsourcing that responsibility to me, while spending the money they should have been saving on quartz countertops. The Mercedes went back in December. The lease company sent a notice. She'd missed 2 payments and they moved fast. I know about this because Derek's mother, who has always liked me more than she likes Brittany, texted me a photo of an empty driveway with the caption, "What happened to the car?" I did not reply. Derek left in January. Or Brittany asked him to leave. Accounts differ. My mother says it was mutual, which in my experience usually means it wasn't. Either way, they're separated now, and Brittany is renting a 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood she would have described as not us 2 years ago. I haven't spoken to her since November. Here's what I want to say. To whoever is listening to this, I don't think I'm a hero. I don't think what I did was perfectly executed or free of collateral damage. I think I made a choice a long time ago to make myself smaller so someone else could take up more space. And I told myself it was love and it was generosity, and some of it was. But some of it was fear. Fear of being unseen if I didn't make myself useful. Fear that without the money, there would be nothing connecting us at all. Maybe that fear was right. Maybe the money was the only thread. But I've been thinking about what it cost me, not the $180,000 something over 3 years. I've done that math. I mean what it cost me in terms of who I was becoming. The person who skips Portugal. The person who eats sour cereal and calls it fine. The person who stands in an elevator after being publicly humiliated by her own sister and thinks, well, maybe she had a point. I am not that person anymore. My 401k contributions resumed in September. I booked a trip to Portugal for the spring solo, which I was nervous about, and which I am now more excited about than almost anything I can remember being excited about. I went to the dentist. I got new winter boots. Small things. But they're mine. My mother and I talk more now. She checks in, asks how I'm doing, and means it. She told me last month that she's proud of me, and when she said it I believed her, which is more than I could have said a year ago. The Ainsley Club sent a handwritten note thanking me for helping coordinate the anniversary event. I keep it on my refrigerator, not because I need the validation, but because I did that. I showed up early and carried things and made sure the evening ran smoothly, and when it stopped being worth it, I put down the glass and walked out, and both of those things are true at the same time. I think that's what I want people to understand. I'm not angry, most days. I'm not sad, most days. What I am, more than anything, is done. Done is not the same as giving up. Done means you've paid the bill, left the tip, and you're not picking up anyone else's check anymore. Brittany texted me 3 weeks ago. Just, I hope you're doing well. I read it. I put my phone down. I went back to what I was doing. Some things don't need a response. I've been thinking a lot about cause and effect lately, not in a dramatic way, just quietly, the way you do when enough time has passed that you can see the shape of something clearly. What happened with Brittany didn't start the night she grabbed my dress. It started years earlier in 100 small moments where I said yes when I should have said nothing, where I made myself useful so I wouldn't have to sit with the discomfort of being overlooked. I built a dynamic, and then I was surprised when the dynamic held. That's on me, not entirely, but enough that I've had to sit with it honestly. Here's what I've come to understand about the way things unfolded. When you consistently absorb consequences that belong to someone else, you're not protecting them. You're protecting their ability to keep going without ever developing the judgment they need. Brittany didn't become careless and entitled because she was a bad person at her core. She became that way, at least in part, because for 3 years nothing she did had any real cost. The car was always there. The house was always covered. The kids stayed in their school. From where she stood, the system was working fine. The cruelty at the party, the dress, the comment, the performance of it in front of people, that wasn't a one-time lapse. That was the logical endpoint of a long pattern. When someone never has to reckon with the gap between how they treat people and what those people actually provide, the disrespect just compounds. Quietly, steadily, until it's grabbing fabric at a cocktail party and calling you the help. I don't think Brittany is irredeemable. I genuinely don't. But I also know that the kindest thing I ever did for her, kinder than any wire transfer, kinder than any co-signed lease, was stopping. Because now she has to figure it out. She has to sit in a 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood she used to dismiss and ask herself hard questions. That discomfort is real information. It's the kind of information I was always intercepting before it could reach her. The thing about integrity is that it's not a grand gesture. It's not the moment you walk out of the party or open the laptop. It's the daily decision to be honest about what you can afford to give, financially, emotionally, in every sense, and to not exceed that limit just because someone expects you to. I failed that test for 3 years, and then, one Tuesday morning over a bowl of cereal, I passed it. Resilience, I've learned, is quieter than it looks from the outside. It's not dramatic. It's booking the Portugal trip you canceled twice. It's going to the dentist. It's resuming the 401k contribution and not framing it as a victory, just a correction. It's choosing your own stability, not as punishment for someone else, but as basic self-respect. I don't need Brittany to understand what I did or why. I don't need Derek to call back. I did not yell back. I did not yell back. Hayden Seklening unkind. None of that is required for me to move forward. What's required is that I keep making the choices that align with the person I'm trying to be. Someone who shows up fully, helps genuinely when she can, and knows the difference between generosity and self-erasure. That difference took me 3 years and about $180,000 to learn. I'd rather have learned it cheaper, but I learned it.